Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show, it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Dexter, New Blood. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we are dealing with the situation of, Dexter's trying to handle the whole Harrison situation, which I love. That is like, oh, he's trying to do all the good stuff, like he's taking Kurt's advice, which the moment you're like, oh, that's not a good thing, don't want to take Kurt's advice. To be fair, it's like you probably shouldn't take your father's advice, but at least your father will point you in the right direction, whereas Kurt necessarily won't, which is weird to say that Dexter will point you in the right direction, but in his version of the right direction that he was kind of pointed to. But essentially it's like, okay, even Deb kind of sees to it, being like, yeah, I used to do the same thing, anytime I was deep in trouble, I'd do that to Dad, like, get on his really, really good side. And it's like, well, at least he's doing this. It means therapy's working. At least he's not in the same, at least he's not, it's not a kind of a repeat of like the Harry and you situation. So I thought that was kind of fascinating. But it turns out, oh, cool, Kurt wants to offer you a job. He's like, yeah, I'm not sitting okay with that. It's like, because first and foremost, it's like, why are you taking such an interest in my son? I don't get that. But obviously Harrison is just because Dexter's not opening up, because Dexter is trying to keep his distance. He's trying to handle things a little bit differently than, because Deb is saying like, right, which once again it's his subconscious saying, handle things differently, because don't try to handle this the way Harry did, because it led to you getting messed up. If you can handle this Harrison situation a little bit differently, maybe Harrison won't have to go down the same route as you. He can potentially find a better way that wasn't presented to you. So that's the thought. But like the more he tries not to push the angle, the more it rocks him to his core. Like, because it's just he wants to help his son, but it's just like the more he like tries not to help, the more it just aggravates Harrison, because for Harrison it's like it makes him feel like his dad doesn't care. It's like the more and that's the sad thing, because your dad's trying to do everything not to try and make his, like, the mistakes that were made with him, he's trying not to repeat them with you, but that just sadly aggravates the situation even more. And on top of that, the moment he's driving and lo and behold, who's there to see the cop car, I'm like, oh, it's Angela. I'm like, yo, here we go. And he's like, oh, sorry, mistress. I mean, because she's like license and registration. He's like, oh, sure thing, mistress. I mean, officer. And she's like, no, not that one. Your real one, Dexter Morgan. I was like, oh, yeah. And she's like, okay, I'm going to follow you to the precinct just to make sure you don't get lost, because we're going to talk about this. And I love the moment she goes in, the lady's like, oh, like, whatever it is, just say sorry. And Logan's like, don't worry, Brody, I got the breakup playlist ready. And Dexter's almost like, what? So sit down and talk about it. Like I said, Dexter has ample enough, like, okay, I can swerve my way around this without, like, yes, he's still going to look like the bad guy, but it's, once again, it's not like, oh, I disappeared because I was being suspected of being the Bay Harbor Butcher. The last person who suspected me died. So, that being LaGuerta. So it's like, I don't have to worry about that. It's just like, no, like, it is, all he has to do is just basically tell the truth. He was just like, I was tired of the killing. And she's looking at him. He's like, yeah, my wife was murdered. My sister died, and I wanted to die, so I killed myself. He's like, I didn't want, like, Harrison to be around that, so I sent him off with Hannah. I wanted, but luckily I survived the storm. And for him, he's like, for the first time, I never thought I could be happy again. And here with you and Harrison, it just feels like for the first time, like, I could kind of have everything. But Angela, it's like, she's like trying to be understanding to some extent, you can tell, because she didn't go full blown on, like, blast him. But it's also like, right, now knowing your backstory, it is kind of a thing of, I can't really blame you too much. I mean, your wife got murdered, and your sister died, so like I can't really be too pissed at you. I'd love it if, too bad he doesn't. I mean, I think it will eventually come up, but I wish that she would kind of reference Angel in that regard. It would have been like, yeah, like there was a cop at a thing I went to, like his name was Angel, and it's like, hey, because I want Dexter to know that her and him talk. Like maybe that will come up in the next episode. But I want to have that connection to be like, oh, just like, oh, Dexter's past coming back in. I mean, that ended up being an interesting line, because that came up in the therapy session about like how like the past kind of comes back to haunt you. Like no matter how far you get away from it, the past has a tendency to catch up with you. It was very befitting, considering like his past as Dexter Morgan was catching up to him in many different regards. But once again, Angela was taken as like, right, you lied to me. Like every time I called you Jim, it was a lie. So it's like, he's like asking, it's like, are we breaking up? And even before he left, he's like, so are you going to keep my secret? She's like, just go. She's like, she didn't want to talk to Jim. She didn't want to look at Jim because he was like, oh, could we talk over dinner? And it's like, I want nothing to do with Jim, or should I Dexter, or whoever the fuck you are. So I'm like, cool. But for him, it's like, right. How does Angela know who I am? It's like, could it be this mysterious podcaster who's showing up, Molly? Which Molly immediately like, oh, cool, let's look into the Kurt thing. And she's like, no, stay away from Kurt. We don't know why he's lying, but they're like, we don't want to tip our hand with a suspect, so stay away from him. And she's like, fine. The moment she said that, I was like, no, you are the murder podcaster. You're the person that's like super invested in this, because she's like, oh, the biggest case of my like career or whatever could be here. But it's like, no, of course she wasn't going to wait, which I was immediately like, no, don't do it, Jamie Chung. Yes, I know it's Molly, but still, like, in moments like that, I'm like, I start like getting word for the actor, because I'm like, no, don't kill Jamie Chung. No, don't. Yes, I just, like, to me, that's when I get super invested and worried about a character, when I start, like, stop looking at them as their character and just look at them as the actor who's playing them. I'm like, no! Like I said, because I just adore Jamie Chung. So I'm like, I didn't want something bad to happen to her, but just, like, the way she's introducing the story, I'm like, oh, please don't let nothing happen, but we'll get to it soon enough. But Dexter is looking through her podcast. Obviously, he sees the Trinity Killer and, Bay Harbor Butcher, Dokes, which is interesting. I wonder, I don't remember, once again, because I didn't rewatch season 7, because that's when it comes up about when LaGuerta is looking into Dexter again. There was, apparently, Molly did some investigating of her own and found out that apparently someone on Reddit said that Dokes was off doing some secret, like, stuff. Marines, I think, related stuff at the time, so there's no way he could have been responsible for some of those victims. So Molly believes that the Bay Harbor Butcher is still out there, which I'm like, oh, that's terrible timing. Interesting, but also terrible timing, because Dexter's now thinking like, right, were you the one that told Angela the truth? Granted, I feel like if Angela knew the truth about you, but I guess it's enough of like Molly's, I guess his thought was like Molly didn't drop all the details, probably enough to say like, oh, he's Dexter Morgan, but probably not enough to tell the truth about what she was trying to do, because she wanted to do on her own. Because like, if Angela knew, then she would have dropped everything, but it's still like, if she has enough to call me know the truth about me being Dexter Morgan, then maybe she has other things she just hasn't quite connected me to yet. So he's keeping an eye on her, even to the point he talks to Logan about relationships. He's like, yeah, how to make this work? He's like, oh, I'm glad you came to me, bud. I'm the right guy for this. But I love that he was even like, yeah, but sadly I had to use the same, the breakup playlist. I had to use it on myself. It's like, yeah, Molly broke up with me. It's like, yeah, like, it's just like, he's like, wait, if you guys aren't together, then why is she still staying? He's like, I have no idea. And Dexter's kind of like, nervous, because it's like, am I the reason why she's trying to stay? So, I love, this is also the episode of major frustration. I mean, Angela has every right to be frustrated. Harrison's dealing with like deep-seated anger issues, because a lot of that's just bubbling to the surface and is getting worse and worse. Kurt's super pissed because he tried to hit the previous victim. He's trying to put like something on her face to kind of make up, like, once again, he has to keep the bodies as pristine as possible. I guess like because he needs to, I guess because their bodies are going to be covered up, but like her face, he ended up accidentally shooting her in the eye, so it ruined it. Like I said, he has his very particular ritual, but it's ruined, and his attempt to like try and like put like I don't know, he tried to put something over her eye to kind of like blend it into her skin to make it look like it's her eye, but he got so pissed he started punching, and it's like, Jesus, that girl suffered enough punishment from you. God, it was like, yeah, he's just so angry, and he tried to pick out a new victim, like, oh, do you need help? And she's like, oh yeah, I'm with my boyfriend. It's like, oh man, you're so nice. I'm like, yes, Winnie, you're lucky you got away, Winnie. But then you can tell, even talking to Harrison, he's a little agitated. But now I see, like, in the grand scheme of things, throughout the episode, like the moments he has, and you kind of find out why he's so drawn to Harrison, because Matt's the fuck up that he was, and him and, like, Matt had his issues, but him and Kurt were never the same. Whatever darkness and anger he has inside of himself, Kurt sees it in Harrison. So the thing that Dexter wants to prevent his son from becoming, Kurt, it's almost asking him to lean into it, because Kurt wants him to kind of become that without even really knowing it. Like, I don't know if Kurt's like fully aware of like the dark passenger that is in Harrison, not that it has the capabilities of being the same darkness that Kurt has, but I think it is just purely like he sees similarities between him and Harrison, and whether he realizes that on a like cognizant level, like on a conscious level, or whether that's a subconscious thing, that's why he's spending so much time with Harrison, why he's investing so much in Harrison in that regard, offering him the job, even be like, oh, like your wrestling match is coming up, I'm gonna be there for you, bro. Obviously you had still that awkwardness of like you come in the score, everyone's looking at him. It's like, yeah, obviously everyone knows about you ODing, but it's like no one's making a big deal out of it. Even Audrey's like offering like, oh, maybe you should hang out and go on a study and stuff. And he's like, I got to go to therapy with my dad. So, but I love the therapy session. And obviously you have him being you have Harrison being very vulnerable, but Dexter can't really be vulnerable. Harrison, there's a lot there that he can open up about. Dexter can't open up a lot about his situations, because it's like, yeah, that's going to open up a whole can of worms, and I don't really want to do that, because it's like, because I love that he's like, oh, why don't you explain to the therapist that instead of seeing him right now, you're seeing your dead sister. Want to talk about the fact is, want to talk about your childhood? How about the fact is that you were soaked in the blood of your mom who was chopped up, or that your dad, your cop of a dad made you into a serial killer and stuff like that. So like, yeah, we could talk about that. And so Dexter avoids those conversations. And so he's like, I had a pretty average childhood and stuff like that. I'd actually skipped over it since I was talking about his childhood. We did also see the ice truck killer. Once again, I believe his brother's name was Rudy. So it's like, yeah, that's interesting too. That he's definitely there. I'm like, hey, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Almost befitting to kind of get a little reference to him too, considering this is season 1 of this technically new series, even though it's like it's really like Dexter season 9, but it's like technically a new series, so season 1, so there's an interesting parallel in that. But because Rudy was the main antagonist of season 1, and tangents and all that aside. But, like, the way Dexter dances around it, being like, oh, yeah, like, his mom, the marriage kind of went sideways. And Harrison's like, what the fuck are you talking about? My mom was murdered by a serial killer. And he's just like, oh, I've made peace with it. It's like, Dexter hasn't. There's been a lot of terrible stuff. Because even he tried to explain that to Angela, that he's cursed, that, like, just so much terrible stuff and death happens around him. It's like, yeah. And Deb would have said that death follows you. Both Debs, though your actual sister, as well as the manifestation you created in your head, would say something of that nature as well, too. So, but a therapy session did not go well. But it's like, Harrison's like, I feel abandoned. And the guy's, his name's Worse, he's like, oh yeah, like, I totally understand. He's like, no. I feel abandoned on this couch because I'm feeling what I'm feeling. I'm pouring my heart out, but it's like, what's the point if you're not going to... And that's the sad thing, because it's like, yeah, Dexter deals with things in his own way, because he also can't be too vulnerable with this stuff, because he can't open up about everything. Because even if he opens up about some of it, it's like... Because he's scared to open up any of these doors, because even he was like, wait, no, you were a baby at the time. You shouldn't. That's also why he was skating around it, because he knows like that Trinity Killer stuff is still resonating to him some shape or form, considering he's keeping that like blade around, the very same weapon that the Trinity Killer used. But also it's just like, he thinks by not talking about it, it'll be fine, because he's like, Harrison was a baby at the time. There's no way he remembers, but it's like, Harrison's like, no, I might not remember, but I've read up enough about it, and it's like, damn, like, it is a public enough thing, especially when you have a murder podcaster like Molly, because you know firsthand that Molly covered the Trinity Killer case, so probably in that moment, he's like, you probably heard it from Molly's podcast. Harrison did sneak out and go over to Angela's place. Angela's place, but he spent that time with Audrey, and I thought it was so fascinating because they opened up a lot about, it's like, right, my dad, and Harrison's like, apparently, like, Ethan's not the first person he hurt, which, he's still keeping up the lie, because Audrey was like, no, that situation was different. You saved all of our lives, and it turns out someone was trying. He's like, yeah, when I was sleeping, someone tried to touch me, and so like, and it's like, no, like someone tried to molest you, so you were defending yourself. So like, but for him, it's like, I'm angry, and I'm still so much rage. I want to hurt people. He's like, I want to hurt people all the time. And Audrey, and I guess maybe this speaks to why she's kind of jacked up in her own way, as why is like she's not scared of Harrison, just like the whole Dexter and Hannah thing. I guess it's almost supposed to be a little reflective of that, because Rita never knew the truth about who Dexter was. Hannah did. It's not like she was 100% okay with it, but she did, like, accept it a lot more than other people did. I mean, she definitely, that pill was a lot easier for her to swallow than it was for Deb, obviously. But when it comes to Harrison and when it comes to Audrey, she talks about the fact is, like, I get it, like, I was abandoned by my mom. Luckily, it was just me and my dad for a while until he met Angela, and she's like, yes, that was, like, the best thing, because for the first time, I had a real mom in my life. But sadly, like, things got complicated, obviously, after her dad died, and, she thought she found her people, because it's like, right, not only did she have Angela, but she also thought, like, cool, like, she thought the Seneca people could be hers, but the thing is, her mom was white, her biological mom was white, and her dad had Seneca ancestry, but kind of to them it's still like she was mainly just a white girl. Plus, she's not even Angela's biological daughter, so it's not even like she can connect to the Seneca people in that regard. So it's like, right, both you and me are outsiders, and that kind of causes its own trauma, and they both, trauma can connect and draw people to each other. So they proceed to make out. I'm assuming straight, and not assuming, just they both straight up had sex. Angela found him the next day and like, that's bad, just because everything going on between Dexter and Angela right now, which Dexter's like, wait, you can't do that. And Harrison's like, whoa, you didn't even know where I was going. And it was like, well, you want me to be over your bed? You're a teenager. You want me to watch you the entire time? It's like, you want your independence, but now you're telling me like, oh, but once again, it's like, you can't win in this situation, because one, it's like, because for him, it's like, oh, you didn't even notice I was going. Like, do you even care about me? It's like, the fact is that, I mean, you did sneak out. Like, what was I supposed to do? I was trying to give you your space and not be too hovering, which I love that it's like, Dexter's like, do you have any advice? She's like, Deb's like, no, because if you can't figure it out, I definitely haven't figured it out. But she's like, I do know something for sure. You're not ready to be a grand fucking father. And it's like, and they're both kind of laughing about it. She's like, well, at least you didn't have to have that awkward conversation about, like, sex and everything. And just like, Dexter had said that, and like, Deb was like, yeah, that would have been fucking awkward. And I was like, once again, it's just like those little moments of like, even it is like having Deb around again. I love that. Like, sometimes it is true to who she is. Well, stuff she has said could be extrapolated to be like, yeah, that could definitely be something she would say in this moment. But I don't know. It's just really neat. Those still brother-sister moments they have. I like that. I think are so dope. Because there was even one point, I forgot what it was, the context of it, like, I think it was just how Dexter was handling everything, and she just like slapped him upside the head. I was like, I love that. So that was interesting. Speaking of Angela, though, she did like earlier talk to Logan about her theories about the whole like Matt situation, because she believes that Kurt killed Matt. She's like, not on purpose, but maybe accident. It's like, why would he cover this up? Because Logan's coming at it from the perspective of he owes Matt and Kurt. It's like, after my dad died, like, they took me and they've been by my side all the way. Because it did seem like Logan was so defensive of like, for Matt. I was like, everyone else kind of looked at Matt for that asshole that he was, but Logan kind of cut him so much slack, and I couldn't understand why. But it's like, right, they have a close history. Like, I don't know if they necessarily were best buds, but it's like, right, he was always tight-knit with Matt and Kurt. So Angela is bringing up the cave situation, because she's like, right, the search got called off because Kurt claimed to have FaceTime Matt, and just when we were about to go to the caves, and it's like, right, so why would he not want us to go to the caves? It's like, maybe Matt's body's there. Granted, Logan was dealing with the whole wrestling match, so Angela gets Teddy to come with her. So, and like I said, at the same time, Dexter's trying to investigate this Molly situation, trying to figure out whether she is figured him out or not. And it's like, oh, she's with Kurt. It's like, cool, with the son of with the father of the man I murdered. It's like, yeah, that's not looking good. But he recorded their conversation and listened back, and then he extrapolates from the conversation like, oh, okay, so you're lying about, you're saying Matt's at the cabin. I was like, oh no. I was like, Molly, no. Like I said, Jamie Chung, no, please. Oh God. I was like, please don't let this happen. And even Dexter's like, oh, this could kind of benefit me because last thing I need is her around. So I could, and I wouldn't even be the one disposing of her. This would be on Kurt. And it's just like, oh, Kurt's trying to take her to that room. He's like, oh, yeah, Matt. And it's like, oh. And he's asking, he's like, oh, that's what your podcast is named? And I was like, oh, I get it. It's because she was like, yeah, it's a play on Fuck, Marry, Kill. And he's like, oh, yeah, I get it. But she's got her pepper spray and everything. I was like, oh, boy, how's this going to go? How's this going to go? And Dexter show up. I'm like, how are you going to explain? He's like, oh, yeah, saw some random teenagers around and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, dude, I love it. I was like, and I love that Dexter's like, okay, because he even said, like, he even brought up, he's like, man, he's like, this is serial killer 101, isolated place, like, it, not connected to the electrical grid, there's a straight up generator, and it's isolated like this. He says his, too many fucking tuna sandwiches because he's like, my skills have dulled over the years because it's like the entire time I've seen and been around Kurt, never got any inklings he was a serial killer. But then like, it's like, and it's like, oh, Matt's supposed to be in there. Oh, let me check it out. I'm like, yeah. And he's playing coy. It looks like, luckily, seems like Kurt decided, I guess he finally found the message after the last one because it stayed there because we know in between victims out because it was already there before his previous victim, the one before that, like she saw the message, so that was already there. So I guess after the last one, he came in there and cleaned it up because I guess he saw like what tipped her off, what made her suspicious, and he looked back at the footage to realize like she saw something. So I guess that's why he cleaned it up, luckily. And then Dexter notices like, huh. This door locks from the inside. There's no like lock or anything from the other side. And then he's like, "Oh, let me check out the bathroom." He's like, "What's with serial killers in bathtubs?" It's like, yeah, it's kind of the new hot situation, huh? But it's like, oh man, I guess Matt isn't here. Oh well, Molly, do you want me to take you back to town? Considering like Kurt is all the way home, and she's like, yeah, thank you, Dad. And it's like, oh. It's like, yeah, sorry, Matt, I owe you guys for this later or something is what Kurt was saying. And as they were leaving, your boy is pissed, punching the drywall. I was like, yeah. Oh man, you have got the biggest serial killer blue balls right now. It's like, you didn't get to complete your ritual last time because it got completely screwed up. The fact of the matter is you try to pick a victim, it didn't work out. You try to bring Molly here because she's asking a lot of questions, making her he would have eventually let her out because she could have banged on the door and stuff like that, but he eventually would have let her out and then completed his ritual because he would have made her run and then he would have shot her. Like, it still would have worked out. He still would have gotten his regardless, even if people, because he'd probably be able to justify being like, oh yeah, she left, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't change the fact is, we know that Angela already is on him about, he just doesn't know how into it like Angela is, like she knows all about it. But Molly does thank him because she's like, yeah, I felt like that could have been a bad situation, and Dexter's thinking in his head like, you have no idea how close that was. But she's like, what do you think about this whole Matt situation? He's like, I don't know. And she's like, it's weird is what it is. And it's like, okay, bye. And it's like, yeah. And he's like, oh, to Molly, I'm the good guy now, so that kind of works out. So she's not going to be paying that close of attention to me now, so we'll see. But Dexter shows up at the wrestling match, and it's Harrison's turn, and of course Kurt had to show up there. And you could tell the moment like he came in there, like Dexter didn't. He was like kind of like, all right. Especially when like Harrison got like elbowed in the face by the dude he's going up against. The guy was like, oh, I'm gonna rip your head off. And Dexter wanted to go down, but it's like, right, parents can't be down there. And obviously Kurt's giving Harrison all the wrong advice, and Harrison ends up winning the match, but he breaks the dude's arm in the process. And in that moment, you could tell, like, because the thing is, Kurt and Audrey like know about his anger. Kurt makes him lean into it. At least Audrey's understanding. When he looks at Dexter looking at him, he gets scared in that moment because he's like, my dad's looking at me like I'm a freak, like I messed up. Like, that's why he feels like, oh, I can't even confide in you because, yeah, you already think I'm a weirdo, I'm a psycho, so I can't be honest with you about everything, about what I'm going through. When it's like, he's the person you should be the most honest with, especially when Kurt comes over hugging him. Oh, that was great, my boy, and it pissed Dexter off. It's like, get away from my son, you psychopathic piece of shit. Like, it's just like, and he's like, get away from my, and Kurt's like, why are you getting all aggro like that, bro? And even Harrison's like, I don't get why you have such an issue with him. He's like, he's the one that told, what did he tell you? It's like, he's like, yeah, he told me just do it. It's like, yeah, and then that's not a good thing. Like, you let your anger get the best of you in that moment. And I'm sure for Harrison, it's like, well, at least I'm feeling something. I'd rather feel this anger and someone be understanding than be a cold robot like you, which, to be fair, Dexter's had a lot of a lot of training with, like not having empathy. But the thing is, he gets angry, he has feelings, he is capable of love. And, he is an evolved monster. Like that was something Evelyn had a hard time processing last, the final season of Dexter. I also love the whole thing of like everyone's cheering and everything, and Dexter's like cheering for teenagers to perform violence against each other. Normal people are so weird. It's like, yeah, I love it. But Angela went with Teddy, and I love it. It's like, right, we might find a dead body. And Teddy was like, whoa, if we do, it'll be my first. She's like, first or 10th, it never gets any easier. So they didn't go, I guess maybe they didn't go into the same path that Dexter did, because Dexter found a giant hole, but they didn't. They found like a little path. So I guess that was because I was about to say, like, there's no way there's a whole bunch of bodies dumped over there, right? Turns out the one body that would be there, of course it was going to be Iris. Like, the question that Angela's been, like, the thing that Angela's been looking into for so long, it's right here in front of her, and it's like, damn, she always knew something was wrong. But I think Iris's body is the only one over there. The hole that Dexter found, like, what was that, like episode 3 or something, that he was looking into, that he was planning on trying to dump Matt's body there. That hole ended up being, I think I brought it up previously, I think that's where all the bodies are. It's his equivalent, it's Kurt's equivalency, because why else would he be so, like, iffy about? I mean, granted, it could just be that Iris's body is the only one there, but that's why I was like, if he killed all those people, that's why when Dexter threw that rock down, I thought he would have heard a thud, but it sounded like it was just hitting, like, the bottom. It didn't sound like it hit bodies or anything. So maybe Iris's body is the only one there. I guess, like, he just maybe it was an accident, because, I don't know, we have to look into her, like, see the condition of her body. But in a moment, it's like, she's like, hey, he's like, did Jim here, like, you need anything? She's like, I don't need Jim, I need Dexter Morgan. It's like, I bet you do. You need you know what Dexter was. You know he was a forensic analyst. You need him to look through the evidence. So, dude, things are heating up, boy. I love it. I'm so excited to see where the next episode ends up taking us with all of this. It's going to get wild. Like I said, depending on the conditions of our bodies, because serial killers, obviously, like, their first kills are usually their sloppiest, especially because Angela already is suspecting Kurt, because it's like, right, he wanted, like, she thought she'd find Matt's body, but ended up finding Iris's. Question is, like I said, Dexter went into either a different entrance to the cave, because I think he went through his property, like the forest, that angle, so either that's the same cave or a different... No, I think it is the same cave system. Maybe it's just, like, different entrances to it, so... No, he can't be dumping the bodies there, because, like, I feel like Dexter... Well, it's close enough, because, like, Dexter heard the shots when he killed his first kill of the series from what we saw. That one. So, I don't know. Maybe he's dumping the bodies in there. Maybe he's dumping them somewhere else. It's definitely going to be interesting to see. Especially because Kurt's going to be weary of not only Molly, but also Dexter. Especially because of the way Dexter blew up at him this episode. What are these conversations going to look like with Harrison? Which I should also note, it is kind of a little, like, disturbing. If you remember, like, when Harrison and Audrey were making out, I couldn't help but notice what was in his back pocket. I was like, I think that's kind of weird that you are carrying that around. That's, I don't like that. I think that's kind of a super bad sign, but also, one of the dudes from the wrestling team was like, oh, we're going to come after you. It's like, oh, that'd be the worst I did for you, because you're going to get got. But, we'll have to wait and see how it plays out next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.